Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.
We're both wearing coats today. Barnes is wearing his black and red jacket. Very smart. You look too, Sir Barkalot. Don't listen to what all the other dog walkers say when they say, oh, look at him in his coat. I did say I would not be one of those dog owners that put their dog in a coat. Look at you. Honestly, you're like a fashion statement, Barnes. Your jacket, actually, is more expensive than mine. We are at minus temperatures for the first photo walk this year. In the real cold, I know last week, and Kelly, my friend, will say, you were moaning about it in plus temperatures. Now we have it in minus temperatures. Whew. It's chilly, Barnes, isn't it? What's the best lens to use for landscape photography then? It's like an early morning quiz. Actually, let's not say landscape photography, because I know many people don't necessarily label the pictures they make of the fantastic places they go to, visit and experience as necessarily landscape pictures, close quotes. I'm not a landscape photographer. I just like making pictures of the landscape I stand in, that kind of thing. And it's a kind of loaded question. I'm really looking forward to sharing my conversation with Andy Mumford today, who on face value has one of the best jobs ever, mentoring and guiding people through and in some of the world's best scenes and landscapes. He is as much an adventurer with a camera as he is a landscape photographer, and I'm sure he would say that as well. And B, I want to guide your very inquisitive creative eyes to mpb.com, the site that belongs to our precious sponsors. The website to visit if you're thinking at the moment, I have photographic adventures coming up as well, Neil, and I need to think about a particular lens to pop in my kit bag for that adventure, like an ultra wide to get this mammoth vista in the same shot that lies before me, or, as I saw 2 or 3 members of our photo retreaters do in Scotland earlier this year, buy a zoom lens, like a 70 to 200, if you need some numbers, and zoom it out to the longest to pick out a detail like a solitary tree standing before you against a glen, and enjoy that sort of marvellous compression effect, throwing everything behind into this fantastic soft focus, making the tree in the glen the absolute star of the show. That kind of thing. Anyway, MPB is packed with quality used and checked kit in the US and the UK and Europe at a good price, which is really important, with a 6-month guarantee, which is really important. Kit that's checked at base by the team of experts who receive it. And if you're wanting to sell kit because a year has gone by and you haven't used something and you think, I don't really need that anymore, I'd like to sell it or trade it with something else that I find on MPB, you can do that easily. Just go online, pull up the easy to complete page, enter the details of what you're selling, which will trigger a courier to come and collect, obviously with a smile. Then, if all is well, as soon as it's collected and quality checked, you get your money in your bank. Perfect. Now that is worth guiding your eyes towards. I'll leave a link on the show page today. Right, let me make my sketchbook image to start the show. I'm walking today at the airbase. Would that be the Greenham Common Airbase, once run by the United States Air Force, housing the cruise missiles? Still, it has the silos that were once used in the Star Wars film. Yes. Yeah, very observant. That would be the one. And what I love about walking up here is that, the whole thing, the runways, everything, apart from the one crisscross right at the centre point of the runway, that's been preserved. But the rest of it has returned to nature. And there's these deep pools, these ponds that were once the dumps for fuel, I believe, that were dug out and now they're natural ponds, and the bird life up here, fantastic. We have to be a little bit careful with the cattle, because cattle in Sir Barkalot don't mix too well. But the other thing you find everywhere is you find remnants of what once was. Fire hydrants that poke out amongst the bushes. There's sort of wire looms that you occasionally come across that make no sense, that they're out in the countryside. And this here, just in front of me, I don't know what these were. They look like giant sort of pipes. No, Barnes, let me get a picture. Hold on. Right, I've got my old faithful today. I've got the X100V, ISO 160, a wide angle on this one, 4.5, 220 shutter. There we go, one more. Hold on, Barnes. Yeah, it does look weird, doesn't it? I'm not quite sure what they are either.
Today on the Photowalk.
I know that there are landscape photographers who are very strict about there shouldn't be anything man-made within my frames. I really don't feel that. And I think you can shoot landscape photographs everywhere because literally everywhere is a landscape.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today we're joined as we walk by Andy Mumford, who's made a lifestyle and a business from that lifestyle of being in and guiding people within, photographically that is, the most extraordinary places on Earth. You're on the Photowalk, a unique and special kind of photography show. Unique because it's made by your letters you send in about what making pictures means to you, and special because, well, we get to spend time together making our photos while the letters and guests inspire with thoughts about photography and, well, life. And something else, it's a show that doesn't seek to confuse a Catalan by getting all philosophical and fundimold in textum expressi hyperfol lingua speak. We talk about emotion, about feeling, about being out there, just walking, making pictures, and enjoying the freedom that brings, even if it's just with a smartphone. In the mailbag today then, why sound can be historically precious, and ultimate video clip projects, backups, and a tale about one of the biggest movies in history and how we we didn't get to see it. Which one would that be, Neil? Wait up, and I shall tell you. Bucket list photos from Colorado. Why postcards could be a great way to share your art. Maybe the old ways are the new ways. A climb with a view and poetry. Inspiration for the photographer in you. So shall we walk then? Checklist out. Coffee and Garibaldi's packed. Check. Boots on and laced. Check. Spare batteries. Check. Geolocation app activated, please check. Memory cards or spare film, check. Earbuds in, check. Lens caps off. Let's walk.
It's a glorious sun coming up over the forest where we are. There's some woodland. Would it be the southern? I'm trying to think of my never eat shredded wheat. Northeast, south. Is it the southern end of the runway where there's all these? There's this woodland just tucked away. Beautiful, and it doesn't look greatly over-managed. Let me get a picture. The sun's just beaming through the woods here, and there's some backlit, beautiful mature oaks in the background. Let's get one of these. Shutter speed 1/2 f5.6, and there we go. Sketchbook images. Where I've trod today. Barnes is loving it in here, and here's another remnant of an era when this was a military base. There's just lumps of concrete and sometimes grills that I suppose were once. Look, there's an earth wire as well sticking out the ground here. Look, Barnes, earth wire. The remnants of what was the airbase. I quite like the idea that parts of it have been left for nature to devour, as it were. Right, here's a letter to start with today from Jamie Shepherd. Hello, Neil. I found your podcast during my last year of university, mid-21, but through deadlines, lifestyle changes, and so on, I fell right out of the rhythm of listening in. Until about 3 weeks ago. I currently work as a freelance photo lab assistant for a school photography business, and I listen in during my shifts. Solidly, I've listened from the very first episode up to 258. Now, Jamie, that's almost... Well, you've almost got, it is 100 episodes or so to go. And if you're an extra miler, there'll be another 100 more on top of that. I'm assuming you have a stack load more to listen to and plenty of juice in your headphones. Your podcast makes my often tedious job, don't tell the bosses, way more manageable, and I love hearing the stories of these fascinating and inspirational photographers. I've recently become a first-time father. Congratulations to a baby boy, but I'm finding myself struggling to pick up the various cameras in my collection, which include, and this is a good collection, Pentax K5, Olympus OMD EM10 Mark II, Pentax MV1, Canon AE1 program, Olympus Compact, and so the list goes on. I have to say, I thought I had a fairly good collection cabinet. Yours sounds much more impressive. But I'm struggling to find time to photograph my family. I live and breathe cameras in all forms, and your podcast has been an amazing companion. I'll endeavour to send some of my photographs in future. Well, you're very kind for both the comment, and I'm looking forward to the pictures in the future. I photograph everything and anything, but I have a particular draw to landscape and attempted wildlife and animal photography. Well, me too. We'll share that, although my animal photography, as you know, is Sir Bark-a-Lot at the moment. And he's tricky. He moves quick, so he does. All the best and keep recording, from Jamie. Well, thanks very much for your letter, Jamie. And I will hold you to sending some of those pictures in, definitely. But in the meantime, I'd like you to make sure, I'm going to sound like your dad now, stand by, I'd like you to make sure that you do start photographing your little lad. Fix yourself some time, or fix yourself, perhaps more appropriately, fix yourself some sort of photographic project, perhaps. Because, well, you know my one of my favourite phrases, best laid plans of mice and men, because I had every single intention of doing a project from the day our two boys, Thomas and Jack, were born. And then I didn't complete it in the way that I planned at all. And I do regret that, most certainly. Because, well, one of my ideas, which I'll discuss in a moment, I was quite proud of. So perhaps, Jamie, you could take my project on. And then in, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years' time, we'll, for reasons which will become clear, we can compare notes. So on the show page today, I'm sharing a few films. There's 4 films in I suppose in regard to what we're talking about here. There's the dad who does a film clip every single week of his daughter Lottie and son Vince in portrait mode from, or rather making a portrait film, that is, rather than the orientation. Right from baby to 20 years old in Lottie's case and 18 in Vince's case. It's a wonderful piece of work, and it kind of, well, it morphs as the years go by. So that's great. I really hope you'll take a look at that. And then there's sort of along the same lines, 241 million views this. It's a YouTube sensation. A lad called Hugh Cornelia, who I suppose I'm imagining that he was bought something like a camera on his 12th. Let me just throw this for Sir Bark-a-Lot. He's getting a bit fractious. He likes to chase sticks. But I've only got a stone. Sorry about this. There we go. That'll keep him busy. Yeah, I'm imagining that Hugh got this camera for his birthday, and he started making pictures when he was 12 years old, and he has morphed them together once more as this photographic project, and it's from when he's 12 years old up until the day he gets married. It's a glorious project. Now, I know this is slightly different because he made the pictures here, Jamie, but again, I'm hoping that it will inspire you. But coming back to what you can do as a dad, Jamie, here's something that I started that I stopped at a critical moment for no reason, really. I just one day stopped recording and I should have carried on. It was my sound project. So we've stepped into sound now, away from pictures for a second. But my plan was to record the boys as they learned to read. So it goes right from cat on mat and then to Cat sat on the mat right through. It would have done right through to when they started reading more complex stuff at school, then into, I don't know, Harry Potter, Pratchett, and all the other things that they've subsequently read, including now poetry, and there the project probably would have curtailed, but I stopped so early, and that was a great shame, because can you imagine the morphing? I'm not quite sure how I would technically have done it, but I'd have found a way. The morphing of voices as they got older and their reading improved. It would have been wonderful. And then lay that alongside pictures. Oh, I'd have had the ultimate, but I didn't do it. So this is my gauntlet thrown down to you, Jamie, for you to take up that project. Perhaps, because I don't know. In later years, wouldn't it be gold? Wouldn't it be amazing to have that? Having said that, I did keep some of my early recordings of them. I still have them, and I have, as the years have gone past, recorded various things like birthdays and messages to mum and all that sort of stuff. I've kept that kind of thing, and I'm glad I did, because I recorded this. I think it's about 9 years ago. The date on the recording is wrong, so I think this is about 9 years old, this recording. It's special for all kinds of reasons. One, to have a recording of the boys saying they love each other, considering these days they're going through let's just say, teenage relationship. Two, it makes me smile just hearing the change in their voices now, which does make me kick myself again about that morphing idea, and it certainly makes me chuckle, and that's the most important thing, I think, about family photographs and the sound that I record as well, or part recorded. It makes me chuckle, and that's really, really precious. Hearing Thomas, or Bubs as we still call him actually today, pronouncing every letter perfectly, as you're about to hear. Maybe he's trying out for an early voiceover gig, I don't know. So, Jamie, that was a very long-winded way, I apologise, of saying film, stills, voice, sounds, all that sort of thing. It's history happening around you all the time. Go record, Jamie, please. Go record. So here's that moment I'm pleased that I pressed record on my phone for. I think it would have been an iPhone 4 or 4S or something like that, dating right back. That moment of, just a simple moment of saying goodnight. Night, Babs.
Night, Daddy. Night, Babs. Night, Jack.
Love you.
Love you too. Love you. Love you, Jack.
Love you, Babs.
Love you, Daddy.
I'm sorry if that may have sounded a little self-indulgent. As I was putting the show together, the letters and the thoughts, it's often quite late into the evening. I think I go into some kind of romanticized state, perhaps that's the phrase. But sound can be used, and pictures can be used, and legacy is really, really important. You put these things together and they make wonderful projects. While I think about it, actually, I Am 80 is a film that I made for my window cleaner, Ian, and we have talked about this before, I know, but just to revisit it for a second, since we're discussing legacy. Myself and Ian, we just got talking one day, and I was talking about the fact I wanted to start making legacy films about those we love, a real kind of, well, not a kind of, a time capsule, because I only have 2 bits of audio of my dear dad, and actually one of those, the voicemail message that was used for a good few years after Dad passed, that sadly one day was lost. It was recorded over, and that voice that I often used to call just for the comfort, even when I knew Mum was out. I honestly did sometimes just call to hear Dad's voice, and one day that voice was gone. So precious, recording these pieces. We have a backup story coming in a moment, actually. Anyway, I made the film, which I will put on the show page today. It's 7 minutes-ish long, and I made this 9 years ago. And earlier this year, and I'm sure I may have mentioned this to you, June sadly passed And the film was played by Ian at her funeral, because in 7 minutes, with the help of a photo album that we'd rested in her lap and her budgie chirping beautifully in the background, she tells her story. And there's some wonderful mum and grandma humour in there that's impossible for me to describe adequately. I wouldn't do it justice. But you'll know when you watch the film. There's lots on the show page today, isn't there? Lots to watch, lots of films actually, including from my guest Andy Mumford. So the show page, as always, is worth a visit. Right, Peter Foot, thank you for your short and sweet follow-up letter to conversations I've been having on both podcast titles I present. This and the Fuji-flavoured one, where we've been talking about the importance of backing up what you do. I know backup isn't a very sexy subject, is it? Backup, Neil. Surely this is all about touchy-feely things. You're going to talk about backup? Well, not really technically, no. You know I get a nosebleed when we start talking too technically. I leave that to my reprobate friend Mullins on the Fuji cast, that's for sure. I wind him up and bing, let him go. But we have been talking about the importance of backing up what you do. And then more latterly, you'll remember me talking about the brain in the studio, my main computer. That, whose desktop files were not backed up. Yeah, we did manage to rescue the brain, and just to get the files off in the end, so it wasn't all doom and gloom. But Peter Foot writes, "Hey Neil, I thought of you when I saw this article. Someone at Pixar deleted all of Toy Story 2, and the backup hadn't been run or worked for a month, and the only reason we saw that movie was because somebody on maternity leave had a copy of it on her home computer." That someone was somebody very special. Her name is Galen Suzman, and she's now the producer for the new Lightyear movie. I am not surprised after that. And I checked this story out, and it's fascinating. And there's a 2 minutes film, which, guess what, will be on the show page today, Neil, will it? Yes, it'll be on the show page today. How did you guess? It's the story of how Toy Story 2 was deleted. What happened when they tried to, and I think I'd have done the same thing, because it was sort of, it was deleting before their eyes. So they thought, right, what should we do? I know what, pull out the electricity plug. It's the first thing I would have done. So the story talks about that process, because literally characters were disappearing before their eyes. A bit like, it reminded me of that scene from Back to the Future where people are disappearing from photographs. But the film tells you what happens next, so I won't do too much of a spoiler. So I feel like I've set you homework with a stack of films to see. Right, let's have a letter. Shall we have a letter with photographs? Yes, let's do that. These pictures will be on the show page. It's from Adam Hansen. Good morning, Neil. Good morning, Adam. I just wanted to share pictures of one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Mayflower Gulch has been on my to-do list for the last 3 years, and for one reason or t'other, or another, he says. T'other's very Northern English, isn't it? I wasn't able to get to it until this past weekend. Walking into and this looks a fascinating place, the old mining camp was as close to a religious experience as I've ever had. Coming off of the tree-lined trail to a wide-open space with peaks of 14,000-foot mountains all looking down upon you. And there are cabins still standing from the 1800s that you're able to walk into. Now, 1800s to Europeans, says Adam, might sound like recent history, but it only becomes impressive when you realise that this mining camp was built at 12,000 feet, and the average yearly snowfall there is around 12 feet. That's a civil engineering project and a half, isn't it? And when I looked at these cabins they really are in wilderness, you think, how on earth did you find the will to actually build in that desolate landscape. It's fantastic. Thank you for the photographs. This is the first of many times I plan on going up there. The hike was about 3 miles on a moderate incline, which Ghost, my dog, definitely helped pull me up, and of course Katie, with some of her sarcastic encouragement. I couldn't ask for a better day. Thanks for all you do from Adam Hansen, and I'll pop up Adam's Instagram with his photographs as well, because you'll see some more pictures that he made on that trail. Now, if you think you recognise Adam's name, that is because in May earlier this year I talked with him on an episode called Sobriety, PTSD and Me, about how photography had been such an important healing influence during a period of incredible instability for people all over the globe during COVID. Now, Adam at that time had moved his entire life to a new part of the US altogether, and found himself with lots of time on his hands and lots of nature to discover, which couldn't have come at a better time, as he explains in this inspirational clip from that time.
The CDC did say, they're like, you can go for your walks. And so I'm like, oh, I got to walk the dog anyway, might as well bring a camera with me. And so we started off doing 4-mile walks, and then that went into 7, which went into 12, which went into 33 miles. It just kept getting further and further the longer we were in lockdown. And I started seeing the weight fall off. I started seeing a change in myself where I felt better about myself. I definitely felt photography was an outlet for me at that point. I kind of found that when in doubt, just carry a camera and kind of show what I'm seeing on a daily basis. Because there is a gorgeous trail about 4 blocks from me that I can go all the way into downtown Denver. So I figured let's explore that trail as much as possible and take pictures along the way. And some days I would get 3 pictures, some days I would get 200.
You can hear Barney there in his, hey, you look resplendent, Barnes, in your black and red coat. You look like a superhero. You really do. That was Adam Hansen there, episode 302. I will leave a link on the show page to that episode as well, and you'll see his photographs as I mentioned. It's great to get your pictures and your stories because well, sometimes people write in about other folk, and in Adam's case, it was a music photographer called Madison Thorne who made me aware of Adam, and I just knew that I really wanted to talk with him. And there's no reason why, if you've got a friend that you want to talk about who's inspirational to you photographically, then let me know about them, but also let me know about you. Don't be shy, because I want to hear your story, your travels, what you like to photograph, where you're going, what you're seeing, all those kind of things. That's the fuel for this show. If we don't have them, then we've got a very short show. Send them to the email address, which is stories@photowalk.show, plural, stories@photowalk.show. You don't have to send pictures, but if you are, then 2,000 pixels wide, please, if you can. Don't worry if you can't, just WeTransfer or Dropbox them over, and I'll do the honours for you. But it does help the email system if you can send me files that aren't a gazillion pixels wide. Because I know my other listener with that fancy Leica, oh dear, always sending me things that are huge. I must just mention as well that, of course, we have our Facebook group where many of our wonderful walkers meet and they talk about the pictures that they're making and the projects that they're working on. So do pop into there as well. If you like the Book of Face, it's a friendly place. We make sure it's not one of those places where if you ask a question, you get those folk that, in some other groups that say, "What? Don't you know that?" Phew, dear. None of that behaviour in our Facebook group. And our wonderful Emily Renier and Neil Ford and Andrea Gilpin, they're in there just helping it go with a flow and a smile. Adam, from just a moment ago, has led beautifully really into part 1 of my conversation with my guest Andy Mumford today, who is a landscape photographer. And I've been meaning to talk to Andy for quite some time, actually. But I think he's more. Not that landscape is not enough. He's an adventuring, spirited photographer, if there is such a genre. He mentors, he teaches, he has a very, how can I describe this? A very genuine, very authentic YouTube channel, which I think gives him a chance to share his passion in this wonderfully relaxed manner.
Don't think of landscape photography as something that you can only do in the golden hour or when there's perfect light or when you've got an incredible sky or the perfect conditions or something like that. I mean, those conditions are wonderful when you get them, but by and large, they're the exception, not the rule. And most of the time, the conditions that you get when you're out shooting or when you want to go out shooting are less than ideal or less than perfect. Where I live in Lisbon, typically the skies look like this for 9 months a year, just clear blue skies. No clouds in them whatsoever, no drama, nothing happening, and sunsets just this kind of, there's no color, the sky just gets lighter and lighter and more bleached out, and then you're into the blue hour again with no clouds. Now, putting aside the fact that you can never really predict what the conditions are going to be like, and weather forecasts are often wrong. There are so many times when I've stayed at home and then looked out the window at sunset, there's just been an incredible sky. Putting aside that fact, you can still actually go out and take really good images in any light whatsoever, whether it's bright light, whether it's cloudy or overcast. And by not going out, by staying at home, you're missing the opportunity to shoot. You're missing the opportunity to create what could be a really good image. More than anything, you're missing the opportunity to practice your craft, to just get out and be in nature and appreciate the experience and come back home having learned a little bit, even if you don't manage to take a great photo.
Yes, there we go. Andy Mumford, my guest today. A few moments from one of his YouTube films. Extra milers would have had an introduction to him and the weekend just gone, but today I'd like to talk about a number of things with somebody who's made it his business to travel to the most incredible places, mentoring, as I say, and teaching people who have a passionate, inquiring mind about the world and the wonders within it. So we're going to talk about what it is that makes him freeze for his art, climb mountains at unreasonably o'clock of a morning, and other facets of being a photographer. Self-doubt included, actually, because we are all, after everything is said and done, photographed and processed, we're all humans, which gives rise to a gratitude as well, and that's something that he positively touches on. So it's very much a conversation about the touchy-feely, as much an interview about getting the best out of making pictures in the wonderful wilds of this world. Any more W's? Here's part one of my chat then with Andy Mumford.
Andy, landscape photography may well evoke this idea for anybody who hasn't really shot it, spent a lot of time doing it, of terribly serious vista-type pictures that humble us slightly as we stand in it. But of course, in some ways, we're all making landscape pictures of a sort, aren't we? Unless we're in a 6-foot Infinity Cove studio in the city or something like that, we're all in the landscape, aren't we?
Yes, we are. I think, the deep answer to this is that and one of the things that I find about landscape photography is that certainly as human beings, we've evolved from the landscape. We used to live much closer to nature than we do now. For the vast part of human existence, we've lived much closer to nature. And it's only relatively recently that we've started moving into cities and moved away from it. But I do feel that we carry that in us. It's one of the reasons why people still appreciate, we'll go for walks in parks and we still love going out and looking at the sunset, because I do think nature speaks to us on quite a deep level. But as to us all being in the landscape, what the landscape is, I know that there are landscape photographers who are very strict about there shouldn't be anything man-made within my frames. I really don't feel that. And I think you can shoot landscape photographs everywhere, because literally everywhere is the landscape. Personally speaking, nature is what attracts me, and it is that feeling of being in nature that kind of drives me to go to these places and try to capture them.
Although actually I find, the pictures, and talking about your portfolio, the pictures I really enjoy the most are when there is a small person or something within that frame that gives me a sense of scale, because that, I think, is what landscape can truly deliver, is the sense of scale of where we are in the world.
I wish I could remember the name of the German romantic painter Wander Above a Sea of Fog. It's a very famous painting. What's his name? It'll come to me later. And it's a painting of a man standing on a rock ridge looking out across this field of mountains.
Yeah.
Painted in, I think, 1820 or something like that. It's you look at it and you go, that's an Instagram selfie. He was doing it 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And that painting and that feeling that behind that painting of the person in the landscape, I think it does it communicates so much. There's that sense of scale. Then you get to see how big the mountains are. But I do think that, it's what you said. It's when you put the figure in front of the mountains, in front of the sweeping vistas, then you get this, it does touch something in you. There is an emotional response, I think, where, you're seeing someone in this tiny environment that's just, almost overwhelmed by the landscape. I find places like that, the most fascinating places that I've been to are places like the Amazon, like mountain ranges, like deserts, where you're looking out over a view that hasn't changed for tens of hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps. And that feeling of almost insignificance, I think it's quite a reassuring thing, just the epic scale of it in comparison with our own lives and how powerful that is.
Never so much, never more than when you're looking at, I find, pictures of in the Antarctic, because an iceberg can look terribly small until you put a boat next to it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, there is that, sense of weight and that sense of mass and just particularly against something so small and frail as a boat or a human being, that I think it's quite a powerful structure for an image.
Yeah. Did you find landscape, or did landscape find you? I mean, I know your childhood holidays played a big part in this adventure, didn't they?
Yeah, I was really lucky that I had parents who were quite proactive. I grew up in the Midlands in the 80s. We weren't wealthy, but my parents really wanted to show me and my sister things. So we would drive down to Portsmouth or wherever, or Southampton, and catch the ferry over to France and spend a couple of weeks camping. That really kind of opened my eyes to the bigger world. But I think it was more than anything, when I was about 11, we spent some time in Austria, and I just fell in love with mountains.
Good God,
Just it was so alien to everything that I'd seen, and just the scale of these things and how the whole horizon was up there. And that really was something that had a deep impression. And I've always enjoyed being out in nature. Photography came much later. Photography only came in my mid-30s when I started getting interested in how to capture it and in sharing this. Before that, it had always just been something that I did, from a hiking point of view. And I still enjoy doing that. Now I will regularly go out hiking without a camera or with just a phone, because that's something, it's just something that's always been there. Photography came on top of that, but I do think the two things go together very well.
See, I tend to think of you as always having been a photographer, having watched your films and read your words, and it just occurs to me that, Andy must have always been a photographer. But there is, of course, a gap between school and youth and taking it up professionally. But I just don't see you as somebody who would ever feel comfortable in a shirt and tie in an office looking out the window.
I actually studied economics, believe it or not, and learned enough to know that I never wanted to do that as a career. It just wasn't for me. And after I graduated, I'd had the travel bug from what happened with my parents taking me to places like France and Germany. And I just wanted to, before I settled down into serious life, I wanted to just travel a little bit. So I was looking at ways in which I could do that. And it's funny how your life turns on moments. You don't realize at the time that it's turning, but when you look back on it, you realize that something's happened. And for me, it was at the end of my university course when I was sitting around with a group of friends discussing what we were going to do in terms of applying for jobs, and I had no idea. And one of the girls on the course said in a very this was a critical, derogatory way, "Oh, you remind me of my brother. He qualified in law, and then he went to Spain to teach English to kids." She thought that he'd blown his law degree, and for me, I was like, "That's the thing. You can do that? That sounds really cool." So I straight over to the library and learning about teaching English as a foreign language, and that's what I did. So I spent a year after I graduated and then trained up to become an English teacher. which is how I've lived in Greece, very briefly in Italy, and then I ended up in Lisbon. I loved it here. So I would.
Right. So that's what brought you to Lisbon originally.
So I was an English teacher, and I was working for an organisation called the British Council for a long time. And then hiking was always at the side of that, and then photography came as a hobby. And then there was a slow transition across via wedding photography, of all things. I was a wedding photographer for about 5 years, where I learned a lot about doing this professionally, working with clients, the ins and outs of running a photography business. But it wasn't I kind of fell into it accidentally because I got asked to take photographs of friends' weddings, and then I advertised a little bit and ended up doing it professionally because it's a relatively small market here, a small world in Lisbon, so it wasn't too hard to get work, but I never really loved it. And I always had the idea, landscape photography was what I loved doing. I would every year try to find time to travel somewhere, go somewhere and shoot and spend time in the landscape. And then I've just been lucky that over time that's been able to evolve into doing it full-time professionally.
I was going to say that the commercial leap to landscape photography is chalk and cheese from running a social photography business. And it would remain a pipe dream for many, and something that they'll have as a laudable and wonderful hobby, but probably never be able to make money from.
I struggle with this because I suffer very much. I was having this conversation earlier with my wife. I struggle very much with imposter syndrome, and I honestly can't believe how lucky I've been. Certain opportunities just fell open. I have been very fortunate in that respect. The other thing is that when I did start to try to make the jump to try to do this professionally, I'd established myself through, I'd had a professional job through teaching. I was doing wedding photography, and I went down to part-time so I could continue getting some income from my teaching job. And then the transition was kind of gradual, so I could kind of test the water and build things up without just making this massive leap and fail or sink or swim. So I was very lucky, and I had time to build it up.
And has the industry changed a lot in that time? Did it start out with print sales being king? But now, of course, workshops and guidance and mentoring, that's become quite if not the most important part of your business.
I came in post that anyway. I've never really made, even when I started, the idea of making a living selling prints or doing stock photography or through working with magazines, that had gone. You do an article for a magazine and what they will pay you has decreased and decreased and decreased.
Yeah. And
even with prints, making enough to call a living was never a viable option for me. That kind of market, I think that boat had sailed. Only people who are very established and right at the top of the profession of landscape photography can make a living through selling prints. Because of my background as a teacher, it was always a really natural thing to me to do workshops, and that was how I started. Was people would contact me and say, "I'm coming to Portugal. I'd love to spend a day shooting with you," and I grew my business entirely out of that. And when I started working with magazines, it was always writing articles on why you need a telephoto lens, or tricks of using a wide angle lens, or things like this. So there's always been the photo educating part has always been probably the driver of my photography profession in terms of my income. And now, yes, it is. Workshops is 80% of my income. But the irony is now that through workshops and through YouTube, I've been able to build up a name where I now can sell far more prints, but than I could before. But yeah, it's still photo education and that kind of thing, which is the driver in terms of income.
You're another fantastic example of that overnight 10-year success, because it takes a while to build a reputation, to start a YouTube channel, to develop it for people to trust you, to then see you as the expert.
It is, and I think depending on your personality, as I said, I do suffer from imposter syndrome because it was so slow to build, and then COVID happened, and just when I'd reached that point where I thought, this looks like this is going to be viable. This is working. And then COVID happened, and I lost, I had to cancel 1.5 years worth of workshops and lost, almost 18 months of income. And then you think, is this ever going to start again? At the back of my head, there's always this idea that this could stop at any minute. I am sort of fascinated by the psychology of, for want of a better word, success and the drivers that people have. And I do think that fear of failure is quite a strong driver in a lot of people to achieve things. And my dad left school very young with no qualifications and worked in the mines when there were still mines where I grew up. And that kind of having ingrained into you is that you have to earn everything that you get in life. So there's always this kind of fear that if I stop, it's like, if I ever stop, if I ever take this for granted, if I ever just go, well, things are going okay, then that's when everything will start to go wrong. So I am very aware of how lucky I am. And I do think there are so many incredibly talented people doing photography now. I think it's become very democratized over the last 10, 15 years with the incredible quality of equipment and how affordable that is now. And then through social media, people being able to spread their work around. And I do think that that's been a fantastic thing. It's a democratization of art, that you now don't need to know the right people to then be able to get a gallery exhibition and then persuade people to come along and buy your work. And I think it's wonderful now that people who have got the talent and are willing to put the work in can make a living. But I'm very aware, I'm constantly looking at other people's work going, oh my God, that work is so good. They should be doing so much better than they are, because there's so many people who are very, very good, and I do feel very fortunate to be able to do this.
Well, I think imposter syndrome is something we talk about so often on this show, and I'm always surprised at just how far that imposter syndrome sort of travels, if you like, up the path and travels with the sort of photographers. I think, my word, I would never have imagined in 1,000 years you would suffer from this.
Yeah, I think, and this I'm sort of fascinated, as I said, by the drivers of success, because I really do believe, and I'm not comparing myself with hugely successful people, because I'm simply not. I'm doing okay enough to make a living, but I do suspect that even people at the top end of whatever profession they're doing, if Portugal's favorite person, Cristiano Ronaldo, I suspect he's driven incredibly hard by that sense of failing, and I do think that when you scratch at that quite deeply, that imposter syndrome is there. You're constantly with a need to prove yourself, and that fear of it all disappearing.
We talk also a lot about mental health and solace, and I would imagine the sort of meditative process of photography and landscape photography in particular. I wonder if I were to attach a heart monitor to Andy Mumford, whether that would be a very much slowed state when you're in your favourite places.
Not at the beginning, because usually your heart's thumping after having hiked there, carrying all the cameras.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that bit. I've seen you hiking across mountains.
I don't know if we've got enough time, because I think that the idea of mental health and how the hobbies that we seek, the way that we choose to spend our free time, how influential that is on our mental health. The concept of the monkey mind in Buddhism is a fascinating thing. Our minds are constantly on the go. The idea of being able to just let your mind rest is very challenging. It's always, anyone who's ever tried meditation knows, just the idea of slowly counting to 10 in your mind and trying not to think of anything is really, really challenging. Yeah. And I think nowadays as well, with social media, with mobile phones and with computers and the internet, I've noticed my own attention span has probably decreased, because we're constantly bombarded by stuff. And I do find that when I'm out in nature, when I'm shooting, when I'm standing in front of the camera, is when everything slows down. The thought process, worries, the concerns about, right, I've got to get back and deal with those emails. It just goes. And I know there's the concept of flow, and I think that's a part of it. But it's just, I think when something it overwhelms your senses and overwhelms your mind, that all those little things, that noise and that background dialogue that we carry in our minds with us all the time, when something comes along to drown that out. And for me, landscape photography does that, and I know other people will find it in fishing or in running or whatever. And I do think it's an incredibly healthy thing. It's something that we really do need as people. So yeah, my heart rate, I suspect, I've had experiences some this year. I was in Namibia which is a place I'd wanted to visit for 15 years. I finally got there this year, and we were out on the Skeleton Coast, camping out there, just hundreds of miles from anyone, underneath the stars. And I was so profoundly moved by the privilege, that I was sitting there thinking, this is something that's happening to me. Someone reminded me of an incredible quote from The Office, the American version of The Office, not the British version, which is something along the lines of, I wish we could realize these are the times of our lives when we're actually in them, rather than only through memory. Something like that. I'm probably badly misquoting it, but I think it's a really valid thing, is that concept of actually being in the moment and being appreciative and having gratitude in the moment, rather than looking back and going, oh, that was amazing. Because then it's gone, and it's holding that moment and feeling whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that gives you that peace, that utter contentment, which is very rare in life, because we're always busy with something. We might not be unhappy or miserable, but we very rarely sit back and go and just forget about everything. So for me, there's been a few moments this year, almost always out in the landscape, when you feel that absolute profound gratitude and just pleasure and meditative awareness of being in the moment.
And Andy Mumford returns for part 2 soon, starting with the sound of the landscape. A nod and sort of sub-theme, I suppose, in a way, to something we talked a little bit earlier on about. This is glorious. It's very hard to believe when you're walking in this place. And I'm very tempted. I've always thought I shouldn't really do a retreat, which is near my home. Maybe these, and I've been talking about some pop-up Photowalk recordings, going out with you and having a real group of us. Maybe this is one of those places we should come to, because I always find this just a fantastic place, and it's a magical place, Greenham Common. It wasn't once upon a time when it had all the planes would be screaming up and down the runways, and the missile silos, which I can see in the distance here, were there and housed their dreadful arsenal of nuclear-tipped weapons. But now you wouldn't believe that any of that happened, because you look around and nature so quickly devoured and took all this land back. There's bushes, there's quite mature trees, there's wild cows just roaming. And it doesn't feel, there's flat areas that give away that this was once the runway that I'm standing on here, but it's completely overgrown otherwise, apart from those small pipes and things that pop out that you find unexpectedly as you walk. I'm not sure, for example, this is just going to look like a picture of bracken and so on and so forth, but there we are, there's a sketchbook image. It's it's very hard to imagine that this was once one of the most feared air bases in Europe, with the longest runway, I believe, in Europe, which it had to have to house, or rather give the space for these just huge weapons of war to take off from. Greenham Common, yes, maybe it's a place we shall return to together, you and I, on one of our pop-up photo walks. Right, Andy mentioned gratitude, and gratitude was a word I mentioned myself just before I introduced him. And I want to mention mine too for our superb supporters who walk the extra Photowalk mile to support this show with a modest monthly or annual donation, which means your kindness, your amazingness goes toward paying for the music licensing and the hosting and the studio costs and all those things that I've mentioned, I know, week on week. So it makes a world of difference having you there. It really does. Without you, it wouldn't be possible to produce the style of show that we do. Come on, pups. I don't know what that is over there. What do you think that is over there? Have we got some more sticks? Go find a stick. Go find me a stick. And without a shadow of a doubt, you provide the reason why the show is still here. You allow me to glimpse into people's lives through the literal lens of their cameras and generosity of sharing in terms of personal stories. And I want to share one of those now, actually. This is an extra mile story from a photographer called Darren Hayton. Now, a few months back, I received a postcard and a beautiful A5 hand-bound pamphlet. And the postcard was handwritten on the back as well, I should mention, from Darren. It was fantastic, and I was so pleased to open it. Such a sort of tactile experience when you open packages like that. In a creative world that sometimes just shouts, this was a moment of calm, really, and it was one of those moments late into the evening when I often do open not the accountancy mail, I might add, but if I've got things that I think, well, there's a book, or they're the moments I savor those moments, and I save them to open in the evening in my studio, candle glowing. Oh, it's all very romantic, candle glowing, music playing, that sort of thing, while I'm searching for music for our end of show pieces. And so it was fantastic. It was wonderful to receive Darren's package. And it came from what for me will be across the pond. And it had the pamphlet had a poem and some personal thoughts in the front. And then there are 3 photographs within on a sort of uncoated paper stock. A study of roses, and each of these pictures that Darren had photographed, had their own identifying numbers. And actually let me read a few words from his website, because it describes it admirably and so much better than me. In our world, writes Darren, of smartphones, online photo sharing and social media sites, I think now more than ever there's considerable value in sending and receiving physical postcards. Value for both the sender and value for the recipient. From that assumption comes this ongoing project. Each month, I'll create an original postcard that captures some recent experience. Since these are postcards, each one will include a short hand-written note on the back. I'll send copies of that postcard to different people. Some I know, and some I don't. And when I run out of that month's postcard, they're gone. So I have my postcard. Darren, I'm really thankful that I received this particular one before they run out and there were no more. And I tell you what, note to self, I shall photograph said postcard and put that on the show page today, so you can see how the project builds. And it's a precious idea. It really is. It's a wonderful, wonderful way of presenting a photographic idea. And you, because there's you wrapped up in this pamphlet, there's you wrapped up in this postcard. For extra milers, I'll tell you about my chat with Darren in a moment, but I'll tell you what, let me play just a few moments from Darren talking about the postcards that he makes, and a little more about why photography is so precious.
I print them out on my printer on nice rigid postcard photo paper, and then send them with some little comment. I treat them as real postcards. So if I'm writing them and it's a rainy day, I will say something like, it's a rainy day, I hope your day is drier than mine, or whatever comes to mind, because I see it as a postcard. So I think both the pamphlets and the postcards, and I don't know how to put this, I think the post is a radically underutilized way of distributing art. And I think it's just really pleasant to receive something in the mail that's not a bill, not a flyer. And I can create a unique piece of art. It's small, it's the size of a postcard, and send it to somebody, and they can enjoy it. I've sent postcards as far away from me as India, quite a few to Northern Europe, Brazil, across the U.S., a lot from the U.S. I think I sent one to Iceland, so I'll send them anywhere. I take pictures because I really enjoy taking pictures, and I know that you've mused on, is it take pictures, make pictures?
Yes, I know.
I photograph things because I really enjoy standing around and looking at something, contemplating something. It's meditative for me. It brings me pleasure, but I get out a lot, and I think that there are lots of things that I see that other people might enjoy seeing, but their lives don't give them the opportunity to see it, either because they're too busy or they don't happen to pass by this space. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to share that with people.
Extra miler Darren for this week. And in the Extra Mile show on Sunday, hear the whole 10-15 minutes. I've not quite edited it yet, so I'm not sure the length of what it will be, rather. But he'll be talking about that project, and we'll chat fully about how he makes these wonderful studies, how he prints them, binds them, this is the fascinating bit for me, or the bit that really sort of sparked the magic for me in our conversation, where he secretly, not so secretly, all at the same time, leaves his work for others to find. So if you support the show, that'll be in your own special Extra Mile show this coming weekend. You can support us by going to the website. See that orange button just up there? No, top right-hand corner. No, there. Yes, that one that says support the show. Click on that and you can read all about how to support the show. Right, some feedback from last week's programme. Seems you liked Niels Jorgensen last week, the gentleman of street, most definitely. From Lars Heggard to start with, Niels Jorgensen, the street photographer, he says, has been on my inspiration list for a long time. Interesting to hear about his sources of inspiration and approach to street photography. Unfortunately, his Kickstarter project passed my attention, which I'm really sorry about, because I'd have gladly supported this book, and I hope Niels keeps you and us informed about his plan B. Me too, Lars, because that book design idea alone sounded amazing, didn't it? Just in case you missed last week's episode, you can jump back and listen to that. I'll leave a link on the show page today. But the jacket, for example, had two, indentations left for small pictures that are represented within the book, and you get all these small pictures as a separate collection of prints, and you can decide which prints that you want to put into those indentations on the front cover of the book. Yeah, there we go. I think I've described that. So there were 300 possible permutations with which you could mix those pictures up to make your own book jacket design, which I thought was a fantastic idea, as well as the amazing street photography within it. See, we're full of sharing practical ideas at the moment, or this week. And from Michael Mixon, unlike Lars, I'd not heard of Niels before your show, so these were two comments on the within the comments section after the interview. Add that, he says, to the pile of things I'm ignorant of, but I was quite taken by his quiet nature. And perusing his photos, it struck me that people like Niels really do show us that there are wondrous layers to this world that so many of us overlook. I really do hope to train my eye to see more of these scenes while I'm out with my camera. Thank you, Michael, and I suppose there's been a sort of sub-theme running today, which is about the quiet approach of photography. And a mail too from Kian Grierson. Neil, really enjoyed hearing your conversation with Niels Jorgensen. I wasn't familiar with his work, but what a golden chestnut roasting on an open fire, an early Christmas present. His ability to observe and find the smallest of detail in everyday surroundings is actually magical. See, we're all using the M word. Did you feed that word to me, or have I fed that word to you of late? It's a word we seem to be using more on the show. The title, Walk Gently Those Streets, sums it up for me. He photographs not at the expense of people, more to remind us of the small nuances of life that await you if you pause and take your time. One of my favourites is from his Instagram. It's a shopping bag that's poking out the top of a bin, just a bin. The kind of thing that I wouldn't usually give a second glance to, but Niels finds shape and form in the shopping bag, photographing what looks like two pert rabbit ears, alert and peeking out at the world, keeping a lookout perhaps for a plastic bag fox. Or is it that the white plastic bag handles reverse mirror the two white legs in the top right-hand corner of the picture walking into shot? You decide. And that's the wonder of Niels' eyes. Oh, I totally agree. But also, and says Kian, I wasn't expecting this. He's introduced the idea to me that photography alone doesn't need to be your only inspiration. And that inspiration can come in lots of different forms. I hadn't, to my shame, heard of Philip Larkin, your English poet. But now I seem to have spent $60 buying some poetry books. Because I was taken by the way Nils described poetry and Larkin's observations in particular as being a little like that of street photographers. So now I have Larkin with me in my camera bag pocket for 2023 as a companion to my travels across Canada, or Canada land, as you say. Right, some inspiration from Nils, of course, talking about his Nothing and Something street photography project and observations, and the and the photographic inspiration that he enjoys, which I'll let you into. It's not so much a secret as well that Key and I went out and ordered myself some Larkin as well. So here's Nils talking about the photographic inspiration that he gathers from poetry.
I love the poet Philip Larkin, and he's a bit like a street photographer, the way his poems are all about life that he sees around him.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, his poems are all about, sometimes about, places and people, and he's witnessing things like there's a poem, Wits and Weddings, I think that's the title, where he's just on a train watching, in the old days when people went on the honeymoon, they used to catch a train to Bognor Regis or somewhere. But he's just witnessing the countryside and the people, all the weddings as he goes down, and the train stops at stations and on a Saturday afternoon, and people, newly married couples, are getting on the train and so on and so forth. And his poems are like street photography, but written street photography. And I particularly like his poems, and this particular poem is about his childhood, where he's arriving at it again on a train, and he comes to a town where he used to live as a kid, and he's just thinking how his childhood was very, all the things that one might think happened, they didn't happen, and it's maybe not quite the same to do with my photographs, but I like the idea that my photographs are really of things, there's nothing special happening, they're nothing dramatic, they're just very events that could be described as very little happening in them.
That's Nils Jorgensen on poetry, and I'll link to a couple of things on the show page. His episode, though I know, yes, it was only last week. The poem he references, so you can read it, and hopefully, if that strikes you, don't mention strikes, Neil. Don't get political. Hopefully, if that I can't think of any other word. If that strikes you as something that you think, this sounds like something I'd like to keep in my camera bag, then you can buy a book for your kit bag too. I think that's a great idea. I have at times kept books in my kit bag. I've just found a stick, and Bond's been so good today. Come on, let's throw this. Here we go. You've been really patient, because I've had to start some of my conversations today several times, because we've had loads of planes. Greenham Common is, it would seem, a place where planes report their position, so they overfly it. Here we go. Ready, Barnes? This is a great stick. Of all the sticks, yes, I know. Shush. Ready? 3, 2, don't peek early. 3, 2, 1, fetch. He doesn't run brilliantly in his jacket, I have to say. He kind of, at the end, almost topples over. You almost topple over, pups, you do. Yes, so let's do a feature on this. The extra bits of inspiration that you carry in your bag that are completely uncamera related. So yes, I've carried books. I've carried sorts of diaries that have never really, sort of photographic kinds of diaries, ideas, sort of mind maps that I've made. Come on, pups, this way. Bring your stick. And that can make a sort of feature. You're very good at coming up with things when I ask for them. Although the Christmas jumper thing was not successful, we'll move on from that, shall we? Yes. But yeah, things that you carry in your bag that aren't necessarily I was going to say completely kit related, but aren't kit. Things that you carry that aren't kit, that are like what Kian's going to carry now, a copy of Philip Larkin poems, because as you found out, Nils found those inspirational for his photography. Send them to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, and we'll try that idea on for size, shall we? and see if it works. I'll also link to Neil's Instagram today, so you can see that picture that was mentioned. And then I had a note from Nils too, which was wonderful following his appearance, and he sent in a story from the Guardian newspaper about Larkin. It's a sort of what inspired the inspirer tale, I suppose, which makes fascinating reading. So I'm teasing you slightly because I'll put the link on the show page and you can read it for yourself. Right, a letter from Michael Hongkomp. I had some time this morning, Neil, between dropping off my oldest at school and my first work meeting, so I took advantage of the hour to go for a 5K walk up to the top of Mount Adams, one of the hills surrounding Cincinnati in Ohio land. I parked along the Ohio River and I put my XE4 27mm in my jacket pocket and put on my beanie and set off. We're having one of those cold ones. It's about 20 degrees F. I don't really do Fahrenheit. I'm working in Celsius and centigradiums. So what's 20? What's 20? About the time you mentioned taking a picture. Oh, yes. We used to do this, didn't we? We used to say, right, stop what you're doing and make a picture now. And we got some fabulous pictures, didn't we, of that moment during the photo walk where you just used to make a picture. I might bring that back in 2023. That could be it's been a while. Was it 21 or was it 22 we were doing that? So this, which means that this letter I'm reading now is quite old. Is it that old? I thought it was a more recent letter. Anyway, move on, Neil. You're burying yourself here. So yes, I made a picture when you said stop, look around, make a picture now. Anyway, says Michael, I followed directions. I took the shot to capture my goal. See picture 1 of the Holy Cross Immaculata. Ooh. I proceeded to climb the nearly 400 feet of elevation to the front door of the... Oh, it's a church. Oh, now the Immaculata. Yes, it's a church. To look out over the city, which is another one of the pictures you sent in. I decided to capture the various flights of stairs on my way up, and I listened along as I climbed these stairs, trying to ignore my panting breath and burning thighs. But as always, it's well worth it to get outside and, of course, listen to the wonderful interviews. Oh, you flatterer still. But also to get the fresh, hot cup of coffee at the coffee shop that happens to be at the top of the climb. Yes, I would imagine that was... the greater reward. The pictures that you've made, there's 8 of them. I'm going to pop those on the show page today, and I'll do them as a carousel so you can sort of follow the climb that Michael made. Now, he says, I just need to let gravity assist me on the way back down to my car and start the workday. Thanks for all your hard work, from Mike Hongkomp. So yes, the pictures are on the show page. Love, by the way, the view. Oh, what a fantastic view. It was worth every single one of those burning thighs. How many did you have? Just the 2, Mike? Yes, I would assume so. Fantastic. Thank you for sending those in. And if, like Mike, you've been making some explorations of late, then please send them in. That's a very noisy aircraft ahead of me. Stories at photowalk.show, stories at photowalk.show, and I'll share the adventures that you've been having and making too. Is another one of those remnants of it once being an airbase. Just occasionally you come across these manhole covers that are just overgrown by bramble. They're sort of hidden within. Actually, Barney's been quite good. You've been good, Barnes. Let me just put the letters down there. Finding some of these sort of hidden secrets of the grounds. This is not so hidden. This is it's just sort of like a 2-meter square square piece of concrete with a... Who knows where that manhole cover goes, eh? Where what's beneath, where the passages lead, eh, Barnes? So stop being poetic. Poetic? That's not very poetic. What do you mean? Stop being... Oh, whatever the word is. You're like me, you can't find the right word. It's too cold, isn't it, for words? Words don't come easy. Who was that song? Words don't come easy. There we go. A music quiz to boot this week as well. Right. Time for part two of my conversation with Andy Mumford. An appreciation today for nature as much as photographing it. Obviously, the photography of Andy is superb. Yes, that's the reason why I initially contacted him. But as we chatted, as we conversed, it was as much his love for nature that really intrigued me as anything else. So here's part two. And we're going to start with a subject mentioned much earlier today, the sound of photography, or the sound anyway, of being out in nature. What you hear being very much a guide for your eyes. Part two of Andy Mumford.
You used the word deafening just a moment ago, and I think that's sort of that, and I've heard the expression used about the being in the landscape and in nature, this deafening silence, which is a remarkable thing to be able to experience, isn't it? And you've been to places where you most certainly do experience that.
Yeah, not being around human noise is really astonishing. Laying there, in a desert, it's very rare that there's ever silence, but you hear the things that you don't normally hear. You pay attention to things like the wind and things like that. But it's that lack of man-made noise, and also of man-made light, that you're much more aware of the noises of nature around you, whether it be the ocean or the rustle of wind through leaves and things like that. I don't think I've ever been anywhere utterly silent, places where there's ice and you hear the ice popping and cracking. It's a wonderful thing, you just, because we're not used to just spending time listening to that and going, this is all I need. Just taking pleasure from something so simple.
As a photographer, are you quite hard on yourself in terms of, because your pictures are absolutely beautiful, and I genuinely mean that. And I think I've heard you talk about this before, the ratio, the hit ratio of good to I'm dumping this one. This is never seeing the light of day on my drive. Are you quite hard on yourself?
I'm very hard on myself. There's looking at images and there's reviewing the images, and often feeling, when I was in the scene, I didn't do this, or I could have done that. I should have moved a little bit to the right. I should have got more foreground in, or less sky, or whatever. So I'm always very critical of my own work. There is, in terms of the hit rate and keepers, that feeds into that. But there's also the other thing about, the number of times when you're in places where just the light isn't working. It just doesn't work for you. So you only show the very best of your portfolio. Yeah. But I think from a mental level, putting aside things that you can't control, like the weather or whatever, there is often that feeling of wanting to be better. I constantly look at other people's work and just think, that's so good. I really wish I could do that. There was a while for a period in my photography when that was a negative thing, because it can lead you to being dissatisfied with your own work. And as I've progressed in photography, I now see it as a positive thing, because I think if you ever reach the point of being satisfied with your work, you stop improving, you stop striving. And that's what I tell myself now. And it's not an easy thing to do, when you're like, I could have done better there. It's okay. It just means I'm going to get better next. It's not an easy thing to do. It's something that you have to really force yourself to think, of just to let go. It's all right. You will learn from this and move forward. And I think one of the joys of any artistic endeavor is that there is no completion point. It's a learning journey that you will be on for the rest of your life, because even if you're brilliant at composition, there's always the changes in technology, or there's always new things, new locations, new things to shoot, new problems to solve. And I think that's a really positive thing, because I genuinely think that mental exercise of striving to improve is something really useful in life. It's something that keeps your mind nimble. It keeps your capacity to learn, to be open to new things rather than closed off from new things, is all part of that feeling, I want to get better, I want to do better. And that awareness that you're always somewhere on a point in a journey, and there's always, more steps of the journey in front of you, and that's just a wonderful thing.
Talking of technology, is probably a good time to talk about what you use. I rarely get too tech with stuff. I generally like to talk about, the fact that you're out in the landscape making the pictures as opposed to what f-stop you used when you were doing it. But you have chosen to travel with smaller camera equipment. I was really, is the word buoyed? Maybe it is. And when I watched a film of yours and you pulled out a couple of books from photographers who have made some of their best work using small 35mm cameras. Yeah. And that's right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm shooting with a medium format digital at the moment. First of all, people are overly obsessed with the gear. I noticed that from the YouTube channel. I know how much people care about gear. It is something that I think is given far too much importance, because digital cameras have been good for a long while now. And in the last, let's say, 6 years, digital cameras have been exceptional, whether that's APS-C from 20 megapixels. You can produce absolutely outstanding, exceptional images. This is a 1 meter wide print shot with a 26 megapixel APS-C. We've reached the point where the limits on our photography are ourselves and not the camera gear. And I think because cameras technology is always improving, and because there's competition amongst brands, and brands are always trying to get you to buy the next camera, every small incremental difference is magnified to be something that is a huge jump in your photography capacity. And there's a whole area of YouTube that makes a living from this. Like, this is so much better than this. And whatever, you can shoot so well with so many good cameras now and produce really, really good images. So I don't really have a lot of time for the absolute nerdiness of, this lens, this particular lens, if you shoot it at f7.1, it's just look at it in the corners at 300%. How I really don't care for that at all. So because I do a lot of hiking, I did use I still do carry a lot of lightweight cameras. I use Fuji APS-C. It's a really nice lightweight kit. And when I'm doing something that is very hiking intensive, I will take those with me. But I did start using the medium format, the GFX. I took it with me on a few trips, and I did fall in love with it. I really don't know what it is, but it's a lovely camera. And I use that when I don't have to carry it far. That goes with me on trips when I'm not doing very big, elevation gains and very long hikes. However, and I've said this before in videos, and I think it's something that I'm very aware of, is that I'll take an image with a medium format 100 megapixel camera on a trip, and then I may take on the same trip, because I usually have a couple of bodies with me, something with a 26 megapixel camera, and I'll use that because maybe that had the lens that I needed at that particular moment. Yeah. And then when you look back in your Lightroom catalog after 2 years, I personally, in my mind, don't differentiate. This is the 100 megapixel medium format image. This is the APS-C 26. I simply don't look at images like that. And when you look at them on my portfolio, you're not seeing which one was shot with which. When you're selling large prints, it's nice, when to have that resolution and that dynamic range for selling large prints. But the simple reality is that, as I said at the beginning, it's a small part of my business, and the number of very large prints that I sell isn't something that I think can shape what kind of photography gear that I should be using. In the end, the camera that people use should be the one that becomes invisible, in terms of it just gets out of your way. It's the minimum barrier between what you're seeing in front of you and what you have in your mind, and it helps you connect with those two things as intuitively as possible. And I think that's different for everybody.
Well, I think a perfect example of this was the consumer camera you used that took that beautiful picture in Namibia of the camel train. I think it was a camel train, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, in the Sahara, yeah.
Was that Sahara? Sahara, right.
Yeah, that was a Nikon D90, which was my wife's. I had a full frame, I had a Nikon D3 with me, and it had the wide angle lens on it at the time, and we saw that. And so that was next. It had an 18-200 lens, which is a consumer all-in-one zoom.
Yeah.
Can I grab that? And yeah, that shot was done with that, and that's still I think one of my best selling prints.
It's an amazing print, yeah. In the time that we've got, let's talk about teaching and workshops. It has become a way of life for you, notwithstanding that dreadful time that we all endured during COVID. And I'm so pleased to see, I was looking down your list of workshops, to Greenland, to Iceland, to Tuscany, to Namibia again. In fact, as of today's date, Andy, I can't get on a single one of your adventures until New Year 2024.
Imposter syndrome again. I never saw this happening. I never imagined it would. I think part of it is the YouTube channel. No, I think most of it is the YouTube channel, because I think when you're going to do a workshop, it's nice to have an idea of what that person's like, what their teaching style is, what their approach to photography is before you travel with them. And the YouTube channel allows me to communicate that, so people can see that and think, okay, yeah.
Well, it's a personal approach that you have, and I think that's really important. Do you learn, maybe this touches on the imposter syndrome as well, I don't know, but do you learn as much from those that you take on the workshops as they learn and take from you in terms of inspiration and knowledge, do you think?
Absolutely. From a purely photographic point of view, every single session on every single workshop, someone will see something that I didn't see, and I'll be like, that's really good.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me then that feels, I should have seen that. I'm the workshop leader. And there's another part of me that goes, you simply can't see it all. And this ties back in with that idea of always learning, because there's always things that you don't see. There's always something new to see. So I think, there is that. I find that quite inspiring, the fact that there's always someone who will see something in a totally different way. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Yeah. Not just every workshop, every session of every workshop, someone comes up with something that surprises me and that I think is really amazing. I like people. I was a teacher for a long time. Meeting people, building a rapport with people is something that's quite important to me. It's something that when I was a teacher, we used to do in the classroom, to create an environment where people feel comfortable, where everyone feels equal, where people can learn, where there's room for people to make mistakes and to learn and to get to know each other. And I think you can achieve that by creating a particular environment, a feeling. The experiences that I come back with have often left me humbled, of traveling with people who have just inspired me, their approach to life, and just having experiences with people, sitting out in these amazing places and seeing rainbows across mountains, and seeing just the joy of, we're all massively excited. This is amazing. And you share that, and you take that memory, and you've created an experience. You've been part of creating an experience of bringing people to a place that they're going to remember forever. And it's been, it's led to some times on workshops where you just think, this is, what a wonderful moment, what a fantastic time.
Well, it's a privilege, isn't it? It's a privilege.
Yeah, it is. It's a privilege. And I come back from these trips pretty much always knowing that I'm going to maintain communication with most of the people from the workshop, and in many cases see them again. You've got this shared experience because you've driven in a Jeep across Iceland or whatever. And these are adventures. These are experiences that take people out of, and myself, out of our normal lives into something that's really quite occasionally uncomfortable. You're cold, you're getting rained on, you're getting snowed on, but of having these moments that I was referring to earlier when we were speaking of pure, of just connection.
That's interesting, because you used the word adventure, and I was going to ask you actually whether you, and I don't want you to feel offended by this at all, but whether you're an adventure photographer or a landscape photographer, maybe only when you're on the courses, that is, because I think there must be an element of that. There's these incredible once-in-a-lifetime experiences that some people are going to have, and you're responsible for that.
I'm not offended at all by that. I'm actually trying to move more towards doing that with the workshops. When I first started doing workshops, I looked at places that I knew and places that are very popular for photographers to go to, places like Tuscany and Iceland. And those places are wonderful. But now what I find is it is that adventure, that shared adventure, which I find is just another level. There's things coming up in the future that are not on the website. Yeah, I mean, Namibia is one of them. There's Patagonia. There's going to be something on a boat around Eastern Greenland. These really, really excite me. Doing stuff in Iceland in the highlands, which is a part that people don't go to, in taking 4x4s, going driving through rivers, because it goes beyond the photography then. You're giving people an experience that you know that they will carry with them. From that, I think, does come, the capacity for great images and great photographs. But this all kind of circles back to what I said about where the photography comes from in the first place, is it being in places where you feel that sense of being overwhelmed by nature, of being humbled by the vastness, by the size, by the scale of these incredible landscapes. And to do that, adventure, being in these places, having an adventure is part of that.
Yeah. The world's a massive canvas for photographing and exploring, though there are parts now, sadly, that are more dangerous to trek. Are there places, I often think this is a very strange way to look at it, but I often wish, Andy, I had an invisibility cloak, because there are so many places in the world I'd like to go and photograph that I probably wouldn't dare tread. Are there places like that for you?
Absolutely. From a purely landscape point of view, there's so much I want to do I've never been to the US outside of New York. My experience of the US is JFK and New York.
There's more of it.
Apparently, there's so much that I would love to see there. The Southwest, the Pacific Northwest, and that's on the cards. Yeah. There's so much in South America as well, around the Argentinian Atacama that I'd love to see. But if you've looked in my portfolio, you've seen that I've also, I visited places like Myanmar, which unfortunately isn't somewhere that is on the cards anymore. I was there in 2013, and that was one of the most amazing travel experiences I ever had. I love doing that kind of environmental photography, of environmental portraiture. It isn't something that's very strong in my portfolio. It's not something that I've got a lot of. I do workshops, but there's images there from Myanmar, from Indonesia, from Morocco, and I do really enjoy that. So there are places where I would like to go and do. Everything that I hear from people who visited Iran in the past is that Iran is just an incredible country with the most amazing people. Yemen looks to be an astonishingly beautiful place, which is sadly not somewhere that we're going to be visiting. There's a lot of incredible places in the world at the moment that I really would love to see.
If this were, just finally, if this were a binary answer, yes or no, it'd be such an easy question, and I know what you would say immediately, so I'm hoping you'll expand on it. Are you still amazed by what you see, even after this time of leading people through it? I'm sure you never take it for granted.
I am, and I mean that most sincerely. I find the world constantly amazing, the natural world in particular, but all of the world, but just the natural world is just a source of constant amazement. And this year I did my 10th workshop in the Dolomites and just stood on the side of a mountain watching the rain come across the mountain and the light lighted up, and was just absolutely amazed by it. Even though I've been there and into those places many times, and I stood in the Namib Desert getting wind blasted and felt the same thing because I was seeing something for the first time. I am often humbled by nature, utterly moved by it, and I don't believe that's something that's ever going to go away. And I think I'm very fortunate. And it's not just always about seeing new places. You can find that in places when you go back again, because just weather, just seeing incredible weather. But I think the world is a fun, it's fascinating anyway. Even my own city. I don't really do a lot of street photography around Lisbon. Occasionally, if I'm given a camera to review and I haven't got the time to travel, I'll walk around the city and look at it with fresh eyes and just think, God, this is really cool. I think that's the best gift anyone can have in life, is to be curious and amazed by the place that we inhabit. And I really believe that, if we can carry that through our lives, it makes our own lives and the lives of people that we come into contact with better. And obviously, you can't go through every minute of your life. I don't. I get narky and sarcastic and annoyed and depressed and irritated, and I'm frequently unpleasant company, I'm sure. I don't know. I'm just looking at my wife. She's very politely shaking her head. But at the same time, I do still feel those moments of pure joy. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's something incredibly vital.
My thanks to Andy Mumford. And for links to Andy and other photographers you've heard from or about today, their Instagrams, the Veros, the websites, the films, that we have, go to the show page today. You'll find a link in your podcast player app, on most podcast player apps, that is. Or just simply go to photowalk.show and today's episode, and you'll find all the films and inspirations there. Barney is standing regally upon a small hillet. I've made a photograph of him. Come on, Barnes, we're going home. It's almost like I'm not going home, actually. I'm having too much fun. We'll stay out for a few hours longer, shall we? No, we've got to go and edit this, Barnes, so it can go up into the podcast sphere, so that we can hear Andy Mumford and all the amazing inspirational photographers that we've talked about and heard from today. Stuff to do, Barnes. Stuff to do. Sunday's Extra Mile features Darren Hayton, our full chat about his wonderful pamphlet and postcard project, and also something about where he leaves his work, which reminded me of a writer that was leaving his books that he self-published in a particular place to be found. No more spoilers on that. So also, the cruelty of photography. It's a kind of a yin and yang extra mile this coming weekend for various reasons. Our play-out song today is from Anthony Lazzaro, and it's called Small Rainbows, which is sort of shoehorning, because I do think of rainbows and landscapes as bed partners. Oh, Neil, there's shoehorning a song, your play-out song in, if ever there was one. Barnes, don't eat that. That's a mushroom. God knows what you'd be like after that. Come away, come on. This way, there we go. So yes, Anthony Lazzaro, and he's one of my favourites as well. You know me. I've got a few favourites now, a few artists that I really love to play as the play-out song. That song that we just make a few last pictures from our walk together to. So that coming in a moment. This week's postscript to the show, because we always have a PS at the end, is from, it's from Marcel Proust, the French novelist, critic and essayist. So it's not really a true photography quote, I suppose, but if I'd have given Marcel a call on his iPhone in 1897 and said, Marcel, I am a little bit devoid of a PS for the podcast this week. Could you pen a few words and talk about the thrill of adventure, of finding new places, and sort of connect it up with the wandering spirit of travelling with an XT5 and a three-legged thing tripod? He'd have said, Mais oui, Neil. Oh, c'est n'a pas un problème. Merci, Marcel, I'd have said, and because my other listener speaks Greek and not French, I'll share your thoughts in English. What do you mean that sounded like Greek to you? You go off, people. Anyway, Marcel Proust does fit perfectly into today's show, where we've been talking about landscape and adventuring, with his thoughts to accompany that conversation with Andy Mumford. Marcel said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes.
Staring out the window on a cloudy morning, trying to lick our wounds while the tea is swarming. Sometimes it's like a bird that's never shipped out. Sometimes you go around and I never run the rail. This week has been a mess, but I'm gonna tell you, we're a bit at work, gonna make it brand new. We're gonna plot a way for a comeback. We all need some time, and I promise you that. I promise you that. I promise you that. I know this can take a while, but it's gonna be alright, girl. And if it won't be today, I'm the shoulder you can cry on. So cry if you wanna cry. Small rainbows will fill your eyes. You cry if you wanna cry. And time will be Teardrops lost in the ocean, drifters following the stream's emotion. Riders of the night with no destination, they'll never know the name of our future station. We are lost romantics in a world that's frozen. We gonna be the heroes of our own novel. We just need some time. Oh, I know this can take a while, but it's gonna be alright, girl. And if it won't fit today, I'm the shoulder you can cry on. So cry if you want to cry. Small rainbows will fill your eyes. You cry if you want to cry, 'cause time will be on your side.
Sitting out in these amazing places and seeing rainbows across mountains.
See, what did I tell you about rainbows? Andy Mumford, he appreciates them too. That's Anthony Lazzaro, Small Rainbows. And that's it for this week. My thanks to Andy, mpb.com, and our extra milers on Sunday for you. But there might be a little bit more of Andy. We talked too about the cruelty of photography, on occasion that is. Plus, as I say, yin and yang, I'm going to share the full chat with Darren Hayton about his unusual way of sharing his photography. Monday, the penultimate assignment before Christmas. I know, it's getting close before a new short Monday show for the new year starts. And I thought I'd have a crack at setting the assignment. Since I've only done it once this year, I feel I should take my turn. And next Friday, I'm talking with Alexander Ward about his photographic project on wild water swimming. It's something I've talked about quite a lot, I know. I fear that I might obsess about it sometimes, but this is a photographic project that could have cost him his legs. Music today is from the wonderful artlist.io. Final fist bumps go to Neil Ford, head of stuff I simply will never understand. Emily Renier for your eyes in our Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin, chief of staff on the Instagram Vero and Ideas floor. I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.